joined here today by the one, the only UFC and MMA veteran, Gray Maynard. What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing good, hanging in there.
Yeah, we're glad to hear it, man. Are you still under lockdown, or are you allowed some freedom?
Yeah, we're out. We're good. No more lockdown. We just went to the park, and people are out and about. And it's life again.
Yeah, it's good. It looks like all over the world things are finally starting to open up a bit. I know people were starting to go crazy after 3 months, like completely confined like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It it's rough, for everybody. But there's a lot more people that definitely like to get out more and socialize.
Right. Listen, the big thing with you though is we saw you released a couple tweets after talking about the Frankie Edgar fight, and I feel like we're seeing you do tons of interviews. You're out in the media, man. How's that going for you? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I'm enjoying it. I mean, I went through it a long time ago with just the title fights, and it's something you do to promote the fights, to promote yourself a little bit. Um, as far as me doing it now, it's really not about me. It's just about trying to get the information out there. And again, I'm a fighter. I've been through it. I'm trying to stick up for you know all the guys and girls who are doing it now.
And so we'll get into some of the meat of that, but I think first things first, the kind of the important thing is figuring out like I assume you're no longer under contract with the UFC, and what's kind of your current status as a fighter? Are you retired? Are you still active? Are you looking for a promotion? What's kind of the update with everything?
Yes. So I got we split ways in 2018. I lost my last fight to Nick Lentz. It was on that Connor card, and I tried getting another fight just because I was in an 8 fight deal and I was five fights into it. So I asked them to hurry up and get me on the next card. Just because they're obligated to give me a fight if I ask for one, or in a, a like in a certain period of time. And you know, uh, Dana called me up, Shelby called me up together, and he's like, "Yeah, you're done. Just retire." And obviously, all the stuff that's been coming out, if you retire under contract, you even if you choose to come back, you got to fight with them, and you're still under contract, even though you retire. So, uh, you know, I, I told him I'm not going to retire until my contract's, done. And if he wants to give me a release, he can give me a release, and he did. And so I took some time off because we had a new baby, and my wife was in her master's program, and just crazy time, life. And then once it kind of started clearing up again, quarantine hit. So haven't really um, uh, talked to too many people, and but I definitely want to end my career somewhere else.
And so, what was your reaction when they told you, retire? Because you've been with them almost your entire career. Like, just looking at your record, you see UFC throughout
Yeah.
it. Like, what was your reaction? I assume you must be a little bit devastated.
No, he's been asking me to retire a long time
Okay.
ago. Yes. So 2014, um, he gave me a 8 fight contract, and one fight into the contract, lost to a pretty tough guy, and then this was after a 3 fight skid, with uh, TJ Grant for the number one contender. Um, Diaz beat me, Pearson, and then we signed that contract again, that 8 fight contract, because there was really nowhere else to go at the time. And so we signed that contract, had a pretty tough guy named Alexander Yakovlev, and he was a 6'4" um, welterweight at the time, and he ended up dropping down only once. Pretty tough cat, but lost the decision to him. After that fight, he called me in. Dana called me in to tell me to retire, and I just couldn't believe it because I'm like, dude, I'm one fight into a contract, an 8-fight contract. So kind of knew that it was going to be a long haul because he had it in his mind that he wanted me to retire, and I didn't want to retire under contract.
And so did you feel kind of tricked? I mean, you realize he's asking you to retire. You signed an 8-fight deal. Like, you realize I'm not going anywhere for a long time. Like, what are those feelings that kind of come up?
Yeah, you just understand that it's not about us. It's about the company, and it's about trying to lock as many people up as possible. And especially a person that I'm not a Conor McGregor, but I definitely fought for a title a couple times, and they play my fights over and over. Had a couple good trilogies, and they definitely didn't want a lot of guys that have been with the company a long time to go elsewhere. And they'd probably tell you different, but I mean, what's the point of signing me to an 8-fight contract?
And so the big stories that are coming out as well are, I mean, you're telling us about Dana White, and there's a lot of fighters, especially ones that are outside of the UFC. Eddie Alvarez, for example, are talking about Joe Silva. I believe everybody's calling him, a hobbit and all that stuff. What's going on with Joe Silva? Was there sort of this image out in the public that people thought, and in reality, he was a different way with the fighters? Like, what's going on there?
There was a lot of stuff about coming up. He was one of the most powerful guys in MMA, at the time, and there was like newspaper articles, and he did have a lot of power, and we did have to kind of bow down to whatever he said, and he made a lot of stuff hard on people. Negotiation wasn't really like a factor in if you're dealing with Joe, and I mean, I could go into like more and more stuff, but he was just very unprofessional, very and obviously we all kind of knew that, right, going into it. Like, man, this guy is just a dick. He's unprofessional. He's you never get a fair deal, and we understood that about him. But what made it more clear was he had a stake in the company, and when that company was bought out, he took his money and he ran.
And so for you as a fighter, is there, because obviously it's a lot of stuff that's tough on you, but is there a part of you that's willing to kind of brush that to the side a little bit, because part of you is like, man, I'm with the biggest organization with the world, I'm with the UFC, or is it the whole time, is it starting to weigh on you a little bit?
Well, I was in a different situation than it is now. Back when I was competing, the majority of like my career was where else you going to go? Right. Strikeforce was a great promotion. You heard a lot of good stuff about Strikeforce, but then again, it was still, it was a local promotion almost to an extent. San Jose, they held most of their shows there. They had a lot of champs in that area, and they were still paying pretty good, but as far as the competition, there wasn't really a lot of depth. Yeah. There were some good names, there were some really good guys, but once they did start to get more of depth and names, the UFC bought them out. And then but everybody else, the UFC bought out, and At the time, like an example would be in 2014 was, um, you know, take that contract or like, where do I go? Strikeforce was gone. Bellator still had Bjorn Remney,
Yeah.
who the show was kind of on the, there wasn't they weren't progressing, right?
Yeah.
They weren't getting on, like, out there as much. And you heard some questionable stuff about Bjorn. I know Eddie Alvarez, he was in a lawsuit with them for a long time. And then so, like, where else was I going to go? The UFC pretty much bought everybody out.
And so when you look back on it, what's kind of the biggest regret of your career? Is it like you mentioned the 8-fight contract, or is there something else you can kind of pinpoint to, like, man, if I could go back, I'd change that?
Yeah, I mean, I probably would have took my chances with Bellator. Like, after my title fight, I probably would have, just took my chances, maybe with a Japanese company, even a smaller company, because um, the thing about UFC is, they want you and they'll pay if they don't have you, but once they get you, they don't care, and it's like
Yeah.
they'll haggle you on contracts and whatever. Um, you know, Now, I mean, there's a lot of different options. Obviously, not in quarantine,
Yeah.
but there's promotions going on in Russia. There's promotions going on in Japan. Asia, Bellator, PFL. Like, I mean, Lance Palmer. Look at him. He's won 2 in a row now.
Yeah.
He's made more in 2 years with the PFL than I've made in 12 years with the UFC.
Yes, it's definitely crazy when you put it that way. I do have something that I want to ask you about specifically. Recently, there was on the UFC social media page, something like that. They were replaying your fight with Rob Emerson, and there was something that I was curious about, because at the end, you're being interviewed by Joe Rogan. They're asking you all these questions and stuff. What's going through your mind as all this is happening? Because obviously, everything happened very fast. A lot of stuff that happened at the end of the fight.
Yeah.
What's going through your mind at that point?
And again, a lot of people don't understand that's half your paycheck.
Yeah.
And when you're only making 8 and 8, that's a lot of
Yeah.
money at the time. And I just obviously you want to win and you prepare to win, but you also know, like, dude, this is half my paycheck. Like, what am I gonna do? And yeah, that's where a lot of people are at too. And it's not like he gave me more money because of that or whatever. No, it was just like, well, that is what it is, and you get half your paycheck. You didn't win.
And so I have just one last question. With all this, obviously, it's very good for the younger fighters, but just one last thing. What's the thing you kind of hope that younger fighters learn from your experience and that they can, take away from all of this?
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot of agendas, right, to what we're trying to do, speaking up, trying to get other people to speak up, just make people aware of the business practices, the pay, and awareness is great because, hey, you decide what you think. If you think this is fair, then that's what you think. But, like, get more people out there, because a lot of people aren't even aware of all this stuff, right? A lot of people, aren't even aware that we get half our paycheck if we lose. I every time I'm at a coffee shop, almost, hey, you're Gray Maynard, right? Yeah, yeah. What's going on, man? Big fan, dude. Crazy fight. Yeah, I appreciate that. Cool. Man, can I ask you? You guys get paid like Terrible, right? I was like, yeah, I mean, it's a tough business. It's a tough sport. Okay, so what'd you get paid for that Edgar fight? Like, you only make like $1 million or something? No, I was guaranteed 26 grand. And then it's just like an awkward
Yeah.
silence. Just people have no idea of like what goes on with the business as a fighter and probably one of the toughest sports in the world. And so the agenda is to get it out there and to make people more aware of it, and to um, to to get the business practices, the pay, out there as well. But like for me, if one person comes up through MMA and gets in the UFC, and all the stuff he's heard makes him aware of all this, makes him aware of all that, the business practices, the long contracts, the pay, and he can navigate better. I mean, that's a win. I don't care who you are in this, this MMA game. I want you to make the most money as possible, because only a small portion of people, and none of them are fighters, have made good money, like really good money. None of them has dropped an ounce of blood in the octagon. None of them's dropped sweat in the octagon. None of them. And you got people like Belfort and John Jones who made decent money, but this isn't like they're done after this. They're retired. They have to figure out what's next, because that money's gonna run out.
All right. Well, listen.
Look at Vitor; he's still fighting.
Yeah.
So Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz, all those guys are still competing because there wasn't enough cut. There wasn't a big enough cut.
All right, well, there's so much to unpack there, so much good stuff. I really think it's going to help a lot of people in this industry. Thank you so much for the time, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem.